You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Orange County's longest running business talk show and podcast. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have a good show planned for you today. Why do you ask? Well, if you're watching the live stream, it's obvious. Because Brandon Cordover is our guest, and he is the founder and CEO of Aura Accounting Solutions. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm excited. Let's get right into it. Whenever I have a founder like you on the show, I have to start with your origin story. So take us back in time and describe the inspiration, motivation you had for launching your firm.
So I've always been in the accounting industry. I was a finance major in school and came to realize that there actually aren't any finance jobs out of school. I've wanted to be an analyst, and it turns out that to be an analyst, you need 3 to 5 years experience. And so I realized I didn't want to do sales, which is what most finance people do. They become, they sell life insurance or become a financial advisor. And I decided to pursue an internship in accounting. And I used my finance background with on-hand accounting knowledge and basically started working at a small bookkeeping firm and developed my skills over time and took on bigger and bigger opportunities and decided that after a few years of that, it was time to step out on my own, which I did in January 2017.
Okay, so you weathered the COVID issue. You've seen the good times, bad times, the good times, and these times. So that's experience. When you launched your firm, I like to ask founders too. Were there any pivots to the early business model or evolution to the business model over time?
Oh, I don't know if I can count them all on my hands. No, absolutely. When I first started my company, I wanted to be what I called managed accounting services, which was full service accounting. And I was going to do it for all different industries. And I quickly realized that the full service accounting side wasn't very scalable to me. So I actually had to make a pretty quick pivot early on to realize, okay, controller CFO work was where our competency was. So we really stuck to that. And then about 2 years ago, came to the realization that working in many different industries, it was very hard to onboard new clients because we basically had to recreate the wheel with every new client we were bringing on. They had their own unique accounting challenges and structures, and we determined that it was time to niche our focus. And so we decided that marketing agencies was the right fit for us. And so around 2 years ago, we made the pivot to just working with marketing agencies, which was, to be honest, a little scary because all of the referral partners that I had built up to that point in time were coming to me with opportunities, and I was having to push them away and say, sorry, I don't do this work any longer. And it was a little scary, but I knew that in order for us to scale effectively, we needed to refine our internal processes and set ourselves up so that we can have a systematic process for onboarding new clients. And I'm very happy today that we decided to make that pivot.
Okay, so you looked at your book of business, your client base, and you picked marketing. What was it about that sector that you thought that's the one that there's scalability in?
It's a great question. So you're right. I looked at all my different clients that I was working with at that point, and I said, who are the ones that I want to really continue work with and double down on? And I came to marketing agency for a few reasons. The first was that marketing agency owners are very, they're creative minded. These are emotionally intelligent people. Typically, they're not numbers people. Typically, they don't like being in the minutia of the numbers. So that to me was like number one competitive advantage. It's like, okay, they don't like numbers. I like numbers. I could do numbers. And then the second piece of it was that to do the accounting correct for marketing agencies, it actually requires a lot of technical skill. Because agencies do project-based work, there's a lot of timing differences in the financials. And so to effectively do it in a way that makes the financial numbers meaningful to the business owner, well, it requires a lot of skill that like a bookkeeper alone can't provide. So that was the second strike for me. And then the third and final strike was I was already mentoring with somebody who would ultimately become our executive vice president, who spent 25 years in the advertising industry himself at a large publicly traded company as a COO and CFO. And so being able to learn from him and gain his insights really allowed us to have a competitive advantage over, other fractional controllers who may work with marketing agencies, but don't have that high technical experience that we're able to provide to our clients.
So I have two follow-up questions for you. The first one is, talk to me about how you went about telling customers that you had that weren't marketing agencies that you weren't going to service them anymore. How did that go?
So we were very kind of methodical about that. It was a slow transition. Some of them were clients that we just had to say, they just weren't the right fit altogether. So we basically just had to say, hey, we really value the relationship that we've had. But at this point, it just doesn't make sense for us to continue. We're not going to leave you high and dry. We gave about a 3-month advance notice. And then we also paired them up with referral partners that we felt like could do a good job to continue delivering service for them. And so it was important that it was a good transition and that people didn't feel like we were just shutting off the lights and the next day it's like, sorry, we're gone, tough luck, right? I didn't want to do that. But I also realized that some of this business was just not the right business for us. And the longer I held on to it and the more it eroded our margin, the more it required a lot of hand holding with the client, the more that it made sense to cut the cord and to do the right thing. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, but it's kind of antithetical for an entrepreneur to give up hard-fought clients and revenue. I mean, that takes a certain commitment to it, right?
I'll tell you what, when I had amazing business opportunities continuing to come to me for big revenue numbers, right? And having to say, no, I'm sorry, we don't do that kind of work anymore. That stings and it's scary, right? As an entrepreneur, especially in the earlier days, you want to take whatever business comes your way and you never want to say no to anything. And I think one of the best traits that come through experience as an entrepreneur is learning when to say no. And the power of no, and really being selective about the kind of clients you're working with, because especially in a model like mine, where it's recurring long-term clients, you really want to make sure that it's going to be a good long-term fit, that they're going to be happy and you're going to be happy, because there's a lot of work and effort to onboard a client. And, for us, we don't really start making money until 3 to 4 months in with an engagement. And so we want to make sure that really they're a good fit, they're getting the value that they're looking for. And my job is to keep them happy as long as possible and really make sure that our retention stays strong and reduce the churn when possible.
So now I want to turn you a little bit to, what are you finding when you go to the marketplace and you talk to a marketing agency that is your specialization and your niche? How are you received, do you think, differently than if you hadn't made that decision?
There's a lot of, every industry has its unique pain points and its unique areas for opportunity. And particularly in the marketing agency space, really understanding your numbers is critically important to scale, because a lot of agencies, they start, and when it's like a lot of businesses, right? When you're small and you're starting out, you don't have to necessarily make a certain amount of profit. You just need the cash flow and you need to reinvest. Once you get to about $1 million in revenue or so, now you actually have to start building a leadership team. You probably want to go beyond just referrals. You probably want to build out a sales and marketing. And in order to reinvest money back into the business to do these things effectively, you really need to make sure the kind of work you're doing is profitable in the first place. And because agency owners in particular aren't necessarily numbers driven people, they're very emotionally driven. They like to take on work because it's something that they're passionate about and they enjoy. And my job is to sometimes, be the person to bring them back to ground and say, okay, I know you enjoy this work, but let's make sure it's profitable work. Because the last thing we want to do is continue to grow this business, taking on work that might potentially be losing us money. Because as the business starts to grow, it becomes a bigger and bigger challenge to overcome. Mm-hmm. And I was having a call with an agency owner about 4 weeks ago now, and he knew he was in trouble and he needed help, right? He was doing about $5 million in revenue and he had a 5% margin, meaning he was making about $250,000 in profit on $5 million in revenue. The problem was to grow to $5 million in revenue when you have low margin, what do? You take on debt. So he was loaded up with debt. Mm. So now he was in a situation where basically the profits in the business were just going to debt service. So he really had nothing to show for it at the end of the day. And if you start at a much earlier place and just explain the importance of understanding your margins and scalability earlier on, you avoid those bigger headaches down the line.
Okay, so I'm getting an emotional and a factual sense for how you work with your clients, but I'd like it maybe to take us a little bit deeper. Because accounting solutions, what is that? So what is it that your firm does for your clients?
It's funny, right? You hear terms like bookkeeper, CPA, CFO, controller. Most people don't know what the difference is between these things are, especially marketing agency owners, right? Yeah. And so you can call yourself whatever you want. And to be quite honest, besides a CPA, which is a regulated licensure, a bookkeeper can call themselves a CFO, and there's no regulations around that. And so I've had to kind of turn away from explaining to clients that I'm a controller or a CFO. What I really explain to them is, look, I'm going to help you understand your numbers. I'm going to help make sure your numbers are correct. I'm going to help to make sure that we're taking out the timing differences, because if all we're doing is looking when cash comes in the door, when you're doing project-based work, you get deposits for work up front, but you may not start on that work for a different period of time. And so you end up with this mismatch on your financial statements where 1 month you may be wildly profitable because that's the month a lot of money came in the door. The next month you may be at a tremendous loss because now you're having to take that money and use it towards payroll, contractors, et cetera. So what I do is I get rid of the inconsistencies and I want to smooth things out so we can see, okay, how is the business performing? I want to look at what revenue did we earn in that month? I don't care what you received or what your customers paid you. What did you earn in that month? And then what were the actual costs against that revenue? And when you start to see that accuracy month to month, now we can actually look at trends. We can see, okay, where is the margin trending? Are you effectively doing the work that you should be? Are you looking at time tracking to ensure that you're, spending the right time in the right places? And these are things that these are not intuitive, right? These are things that through my 15 plus years of experience in this industry, along with the 25 plus years of our executive vice president, right? We're able to take these insights and deliver it in a way that's meaningful to the agency owner to say, here's what your numbers are, here's what they should be. Okay, now here's what we can do to help get you on the correct course of action.
Are you ever able to give them sort of like industry averages too, to sort of, I know it's different for different size agencies, but are you able to bring that level of competence to the conversation as well?
Absolutely. So we actually have our own proprietary scaling model. It's called the Aura scaling model. And regardless if an agency is a $500,000 agency or $150 million agency, there's certain KPIs and metrics that every agency should be hitting in order to be successful at scaling and to be profitable. And when our executive vice president was looking to acquire a new agency under the portfolio, they looked at these same metrics. And not only were they looking at these for companies they were looking to acquire, even within their own portfolio, they were looking, are these KPIs getting hit? So yes, absolutely. There are industry standards, if you will, amongst the finance community within the agency space of what agencies should be hitting. Now, it's a benchmark, right? Some agencies may be wildly more profitable than that, and good for them. Others might have more of a unique business model where the margins might be a little bit tighter. But overall, in general, it gives a good frame of reference for where you are, where you should be, and then let's figure out how to get you there.
Yeah, I love that, Brandon, because I'm a big fan of having a niche in your business, because you just are a perfect example of the level of intimacy that you can have with your clients that I'm sure brings value to the relationship. I'm going to turn you in a little different direction and wonder, in the early days, maybe recently, you ever felt a little bit alone or isolated as the founder and CEO of your firm?
So many times, right? It's hard when you're an entrepreneur and you aren't friends with other entrepreneurs. It can be very lonely. And for a long time, I didn't know who to talk to, right? I had to kind of just deal with my own frustrations of running a business, right? And when you're an entrepreneur, you can't really go to people that aren't entrepreneurs and talk about your struggles because they don't understand, right?
Mhm.
When you're looking at entrepreneurship, when you're on the outside looking in on it, it's sexy, it looks fun. And what you don't see the 80+ hour work weeks. You don't see the financial stress that it puts on you and your family. You don't see the fires that are constantly being put out. And yeah, no, it definitely started to take a toll on me. And I needed to find some help and support. And I'm very happy that I did. I found an organization that I was able to be amongst a group of like-minded entrepreneurs who are all looking to elevate themselves, dedicated to personal growth, and learn from experience shares, which I think is so critical in business, is being able to understand how other people overcame their problems, not because they necessarily are the solution to your problem, but it gives you a different perspective sometimes on how to approach a problem and how to overcome it. And so, yeah, finding some third-party help outside of just the organization has been mission critical for us.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I do this show is I believe in the power of peer learning, and I know that EO is the organization that you're a part of, and that's a great organization started by Vern Harnish all those years ago. And I applaud you for your wisdom to join a group and then to get the benefit from being a part of it. So,
There, I think, there was a long time where I was definitely a hothead and I thought I had all the right answers. And I got to a point in time where I think I had enough maturity to say, I don't have all the answers and that's okay. But why don't I try to get some personal growth and learn how I can be a little more strategic in my business. What I found was I was just constantly putting out fires, and I was just constantly working in the business, never on the business. And I
right.
needed to learn some skills to help me overcome that. And EO, what was the organization that helped me do that.
That's great. Now, business advice. Do you have a piece that somebody gave you along the way that you could pay it forward with my audience, Brandon?
Oh man, yes, there are so many. Just because we were talking about niches, I really want to hone in on that. One of my favorite sayings is niches get riches. And it's so true for a few different reasons. And one reason is, okay, so let's say you have a prospect looking to work with different different companies. And if they're looking to you where you understand their industry, the pain points, their struggles, and then they're looking at somebody else who just does this for everyone, it's like, who are they going to pick, right? Well, they're going to pick you because from a value perspective, you have insights and value to deliver that individual doesn't.
Right.
And not only that, but it also then allows you to streamline your internal operations, because now that I just work with one industry, now all of our internal workflows can be standardized and structured. We have a much easier time to scale. And I would say that for particularly younger entrepreneurs, it's scary at the thought about, we were kind of mentioning, right? Like turning away business, but it is such a powerful thing to turn away the wrong kind of business and to really just focus in on the right kind of business.
Riches and niches, work on your business, not in your business. See, you're just throwing all these pearls out today here, Brandon. I love it. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. At two levels. One, what's your view of AI, just kind of generally, and then more specifically, how do you see it impacting your customers? Are you guys using it inside your firm?
AI is going to revolutionize the service industry over the next few years. And I am a big believer in that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who uses AI is going to take your job. So I highly encourage anyone today that is not comfortable working in ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or any of these models to get familiar with it. You ostensibly have now an assistant working for you with the power and knowledge of the internet. Okay. And this is such an amazing thing that we've never had before in our existence. The companies that are leveraging this technology are the companies of the future. And one thing that I put on my chief accounting officer is to think about how can we utilize AI better? Right? There's so many remedial tasks that even we do internally within our company that could be automated. I think that probably realistically 80% of the work on the back end we do can be automated.
Wow.
And so leveraging that to not only speed up the close for our clients, provide more valuable insights because we can benchmark easier against large amounts of data. There's a lot of value adds that AI can deliver. And I think being scared of AI is not the solution. I think taking it head on and figuring out how can I get the most out of this technology and drive the most amount of value for my clients utilizing this technology is the path forward.
I love that. I've defaulted to Copilot from Microsoft. I did a couple months ago. I did a test, built the same prompt, put it on several different large language models, and I wanted to see which one was most like what I would have come up with. And surprisingly, frankly, for me, Copilot seemed to have the voice that I wanted to train better to be in my business. So.
They're growing exponentially and they're all so strong. I don't think you can be wrong in any one you choose, but I think you should choose it, double down on it, learn it.
Right.
And the key is really about having it understand what you're looking from it. If you're very vague in your requests and your asks, and if you don't give it contextual information, such as, historical information about your company, what are your differentiators as a business? If it doesn't have that information, it's going to default to things that you don't want it to. And so these systems are only as powerful as the inputs you give them to generate the outputs that you want.
Yeah, I found it very helpful to also ask it to respond as a fill in the blank. You're an expert in this field. Respond to me in this way, so that it has, because that's one of the amazing benefits when you said it has the power of the internet behind it. It sort of can take on different personas if you can tell it the persona you wanted to take on. It's kind of freaky in some ways.
Absolutely, and use it to learn your customers better. There's a lot of great insights that you can gain. For instance, I work with marketing agencies, talking to your LLM about what are some of the pain points that agencies in this size and scope are seeing. What are the value adds that I can do in my XYZ service to generate the best outcomes for them, right? These are very powerful tools. Like I said, this is like having the best possible assistant next to you that will generate results immediately, right? So to leverage that, take advantage of it. It's a very powerful tool.
And it doesn't get irritated with the iterative nature of creativity. You can keep going back to it and trying to refine it. And it doesn't seem to get like, how many times are you going to ask me this question?
No, but you bring up a good point, which is that don't just take the first answer at its word. You really need to rephrase it a few times. You need to refine And then also a good thing that I found that's helped me is I will ask it to do something, but before I do, I will say, do you have any clarifying questions for me to best generate the answer for you?
I love that's fantastic. Ding, ding, ding. I'm gonna take that with me. Thank you. Always learning from others. It's the power of collective intelligence. So, speaking of collective intelligence, what advice would you give an entrepreneur as a piece of business that you maybe you're passing on this advice to your clients, but in general, if there was one piece of advice that we could ask you to give on the show, what would it be?
It sounds a little biased, but I really think knowing your numbers, right? And the reason I say that is because I've seen so many businesses that have been in business a very long time and have been struggling, but it's because their numbers were wrong from the beginning and they could have
Wow.
saved a lot of headache and pain. And so really just teaching yourself basic finance and having a good understanding of, like, if you don't know off the top of your head what your company's gross margin is on a monthly basis, you should. Okay. That is the biggest metric any business has, is understanding their gross margin and understanding, how do I enhance and grow that gross margin? And how do I make that one of the biggest strategic objectives of me in the organization always? That should be at the forefront of all thought, because through that process of increasing the gross margin, you are thereby increasing the profitability, which unlocks the ability to now reinvest into sales and marketing, growing your leadership team, putting more money in your pocket. It gives you the freedom to choose how you use those funds. And it all comes down to knowing your numbers and feeling confident in the numbers you're looking at and driving decision-making around that information.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. What's your vision for the future? Where are you taking the firm?
I'm very bullish on the future. As I kind of mentioned, we niche down, right? So no longer could I necessarily rely on just referrals. I have continued referrals. I've just had to become more strategic around my referrals. So whereas, maybe bankers used to be existing referral partners, now I look to agency coaches, I look to thought leaders in the industry. I go to complementary people who have clients that may have a need I do, and possibly I could be a referral partner for them. And then in addition to that, now we've really expanded into outbound sales and marketing. So I'm doing paid ads on Instagram and Meta, and creating content. And really what I'm trying to become ultimately is just a known subject matter expert in the industry who can hopefully get a ton of great information out there to all agencies, hoping that a small fraction of them maybe come to me and say, oh, I'd like you to have, can you do that for us?
And that is another advantage of having a niche, is you can't boil the ocean as an entrepreneur, but you can certainly go deep into an industry niche or sector. So that's fantastic. Okay, so if someone wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, or maybe they want to learn more about the firm, how do they do that?
Yeah, sure. So you can add me, Brandon Cordover, on LinkedIn. Please follow us on Instagram at Aura CFO. And you can see some of the content that I'm creating, which is really agency focused. But honestly, if you have a professional services business, you will still get a ton of great value out of it. And or check out on my website, www.auracfo.com. Would love to talk to you, even if you don't want to be a client and you want to just talk entrepreneurship. It's one of my passions. Happy to chat.
Yeah, based on this interview today, you're going to pick up something, ladies and gentlemen, from talking with Brandon. So I encourage that. Thank you, my friend, for being a guest on our program. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate being here.
And thank you to the audience. You're a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show and podcast. Brandon's episode will join our catalog now of over 1,500 episodes. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur, an SMB business owner, or a nonprofit leader, and you'd like to share your story the way Brandon did, then reach out to me on LinkedIn. If we're not already connected, send me a connection request. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. Let me know that you're interested. Between Haley, our producer, and me, we can get you ready, and you can be a guest on the program as well. And until the next time we all have a chance to be together, I hope each of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.